Hey guys, welcome to video 4 of the How to Build Django website tutorial. In this video we're going to look at using TinyMCE to create a WYSIWYG editor in your admin to give people the ability to change text on your website without having to code HTML. We're going to see it's going to be very similar functionality to what WordPress does for allowing people to change content on their site. So if you remember where we left off, we've got a view the beers list link on our home page here. Next thing we're going to do is add a block of text to this home page with a welcome message, something like that, that I can give someone else the ability to go and edit, and they can format it out without having to do HTML. So the first thing you need to do is acquire a copy of TinyMCE. So this is the copy that I downloaded straight off their GitHub. And all you need to put in your web server, you need to just FTP up this folder, the TinyMCE folder. And it's got a whole self-contained Django app in it, as well as some media that we'll have to move around. But I've already gone ahead and FTP'd this TinyMCE folder up. So if you look into our project root here, you'll see the TinyMCE folder. So the first thing that we need to do after getting that put in there is go into our settings, and we're going to go to our installed apps, and we're going to add that TinyMCE app. So then now that we've installed a new app, we need to sync our database. So Python manage.py syncdb, and that's going to create the tables that we need for TinyMCE to work. It says everything's good. And now we need to go into our URLs and add a hook for TinyMCE, and I'm going to add it up here at the top just because it looks cleaner. So this is going to be any URL that starts with TinyMCE. We're going to include TinyMCE package, or app rather, .urls. So this is a cleaner way of dealing with complicated URLs. So this is telling you look in the TinyMCE package for urls.py. So if we actually go look at that in our TinyMCE folder, you can see there's a urls.py right here. So this will just include all of these URLs into the URLs conf for us, so we don't have to copy and paste this into there. It's just a cleaner way to do it, but it's more or less the same thing. Alright, so now that we have that all installed, inside the TinyMCE folder is a folder called media, and inside of there is a tiny_mce folder. And if we actually look in there, you'll find a bunch of JavaScript, and so we need to move this folder into what used to be called media in Django, but it's now called static. So we're gonna copy TinyMCE, and we're gonna put that in he sites video1.hackedexistence.com htdocs static, and there's no JavaScript folder yet, so I'm just gonna drop it in there. And when you're copying a directory, you need to use -R in Linux. So now we're going to go into that static folder, and in here we're going to make a directory called JS for JavaScript, and we're going to move TinyMCE TinyMCE into JavaScript. So let's go into the JavaScript folder. You can see the TinyMCE folders in there now, and there we are. Alright, so now let's go hook this up inside of Django. So back in our project root here, the first thing we're going to do is start a new app that we're going to use as a generic app for providing CMS functionality for different pages. So let's do Python manage.py start app, and we're going to call this app pages. So you can see the pages folder here. Inside of pages, let's start with the models. So in our models, we're going to create a class called homepage, and that's going to be a model that's going to hold a block of content that's going to go right here on the homepage. So this is going to be models.model, and inside of here we're going to have a field called home copy, and that's going to be models.textField. And then we need to define a Unicode self, and for this we're just going to return a string that's called homepage copy. So instead of using a name field or something like that, whenever this model tries to look up what it's called, it's just going to call itself homepage copy. If we have multiple instances of it, they'll all be called homepage copy, but we're only going to have a single instance, so that's not going to be a problem. Alright, now let's create our admin.py. So from django.contrib import admin, and in here we're going to do from pages.models import homepage, and down here let's for now just do admin.site.register homepage. Alright, so now since we just created the Pages app, we need to add it to our installed apps section. So we're going to call this Pages. We're going to run Python manage.py syncdb to create the database tables for Pages now. You can see Pages homepage got created there. Alright, so now let's take a look at what this looks like in our admin. Whoop. Alright, so now you have pages and you have home pages. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a homepage object, and I'm going to say welcome to the Video 1 website, and we're just going to save that. Alright, so now you can see inside of this homepage copy we have this instance here. Okay, so now we need to create a view that's going to hook up to this homepage instead of just passing it to a template. So if you look at our URLs right now, we're just doing direct to template and we're sending it to index.html. So the next thing we're going to do is go back into our Pages app, create a view for the homepage, and we are going to say def homepage. It's going to have a request. We're going to say homepage equals homepage dot objects dot get. This is going to say pk equals 1, so that's where the primary key is equal to 1, and since we just created this homepage object, its primary key is equal to 1. If we delete it and create a new one, we'd have to use pk equals 2, but we'll get to that in a minute when we look at the permissions and why that's okay to do. So now we need to do context equals homepage, and we're going to do return render to response index.html. We're going to pass it the context, and we're going to pass it a context instance. That's going to be equal to request context request. So now we need to do our imports up here. So what I usually do, a way to save some time, we're going to our beer app, look at the views in there, and we're just going to copy these two lines, go back into pages, back into our views, and we're just going to paste those there. Then we also need to say from pages.models import homepage so that we can get to this homepage object here. Alright, so now we need to hook that up in our URLs. So back over here, instead of direct to template now, we're going to call the view we just created. So we're going to say pages.views.homepage. And you know what? That's actually not going to work. And this is a common problem that we'll look at right here. So the model class is called homepage. You can't have a view that has the same name as it, or when it hits this line, it's going to say that it couldn't find a class called homepage because it'll be looking at the function called homepage. So we need to name this something else. So we're going to call this homepage copy, or actually, let's call this main homepage. So back in our URLs, we're going to say pages.views.main homepage. Alright, so we'll restart our web server. And back over here, we'll refresh our homepage. You can see it still spits out the same template. Nothing's really changed. So now, what's new is that index.html now has access to a variable called homepage. So let's go set that up. And let's check out what we called. So we called this home copy is our field that we're looking for. So in our templates, we're going to go into the index, and here we're going to say div id equals home copy. Close that div, and then in here we're going to say homepage.home copy. And let's take a look at what that does. So now when we refresh this, you can see it says welcome to the Video 1 website. Okay, so now let's figure out how to get this spitting out HTML from a text field. If you go into here and you go into your homepage object, if we wanted the word welcome to be bold, and so we wrapped it inside of HTML b tag, which is a standard way to do it in HTML. When we refresh, you'll see that Django actually escapes the HTML that's inside of here. Django takes a very security conscious view, so by default it'll escape anything that it's not sure about. So we have to tell Django, no, this is okay to have HTML in here. You can go ahead and not escape that. So we do that at the template level. Inside of our template here, we use what's called a template filter. So we pipe this through the safe filter. And that just says that any code that's in there is safe to print out. You don't have to worry about it. Nobody's going to hijack any of that. We already know what's going on there. So when we pipe it through safe, you can see welcome's now bold, and it'll actually spit HTML out into here. But the problem is, I want to be able to give people the ability to edit this without having to code HTML. I want to give them a WYSIWYG editor so they can just click the buttons, highlight things. It's a lot simpler to deal with. So we're going to use TinyMCE to do that. And the area we set this up in is in the admin.py. So we're going to go back into our Pages app, and we're going to pull up our admin. And the first thing we're going to do is create a custom class. We're going to call this TinyMCE admin. And this is going to extend admin.modelAdmin. And we're going to say class media to provide it some extra media. We're going to say JS for JavaScript equals /static/js/tinymce. That's that folder we just copied into there. And we're going to tell it where tinymce.js is. That's the main JavaScript file that runs tinymce. And then we're going to give it another file called static.js/tinymce. And we're going to call this one textareas.js. And that one doesn't exist yet, so we're going to have to create it. And then down here, we're going to tell it when you register the home page, you want to use TinyMCE admin to automatically replace text areas. So in our video, in our site's static folder now, we have to create that textareas.js. So inside of here, inside of JS, inside of TinyMCE, here we need to create, you can see here, tinymce.js. So you can see it's a minified version of the actual editor. I've already created this file. You guys would be better off just copying and pasting it unless you want to read through the TinyMCE admin. It'll explain how to, or documentation. It'll explain how to do all this. But I have a copy of it that I normally use. So let's just take a look at that, and I'll post this on the Hacked Existence page for this video, so you can just jump on there and download that if that'll make it quicker for you. But you can see here, all this file does is call tinymce.init. So if you're trying to do this yourself, you're going to look for that in the documentation. It's going to explain all this different stuff you can do. You can set up all the different buttons. So you could say, I don't want them to have the italic button. We just remove it from there. You can do all kinds of other really cool stuff in here, like allow iframes, things like that. But for now, we're just going to use this straight out of the box, and again, I'll post that so you guys can just download it and use it yourselves. So at this point, should be able to restart our web server, and we're going to click on homepage copy, and you can see this blows up with our TinyMCE editor now. So if we highlight welcome and make it bold, italic, and maybe we change the color of it to blue, and we'll take our explanation point here and maybe change its color to red, and then we'll hit save. Now over here on the home page, when we refresh, you can see welcome's turned blue, this turned red. So all you have to do now from this point forward, whenever you create a model, let's see here, in the admin for the model, you just have to add this extra media, tell it where TinyMCE is, and it'll automatically replace any text field or text area in the Django backend with a TinyMCE widget, so that people can do all this cool formatting. You can take it and right align it, center justify it, put a strike through it. You can create tables. It's got this all built in. You can link it, so you can give it a URL, a target, things like that. It's very similar. It's actually built on the same style editor that WordPress uses, but in Django you kind of got to build it yourself. So now let's look at giving a user the ability to edit this page. So one thing that we want to avoid is having them have the add homepage button, and we want to also strip their ability to say delete selected home pages. We only want them to edit it because in our view we've called pk equals 1. So this is the one of primary key this is the object that has a primary key of 1. So if a user deletes that, they're not going to be able to get back to that object again without going into the view and changing the primary key. So here inside of users, so I'm the only user in here right now, but what you would have to do is your user would have staff status because they have to have that to log into the admin site. Super user status gives them all of these permissions automatically. So for a normal user, they wouldn't have super user status, and all you would do is go down here to your pages object, and you would just click can change home page. Put that in their permissions. If you gave them the ability to add and delete home pages, they can potentially destroy that primary key setup that we have. If the only thing they have is can change home page, and I'm not going to save that because I'm the only user in here, but if they could only change it, they wouldn't have an action bar here, and they wouldn't have an add homepage button. They would only just be able to see homepage copy, click that, and make changes to it. So that makes it really simple for us to give people permission to edit blocks of text on a website, and it makes it really easy for people who aren't familiar or fluent in HTML to be able to add styles to their text blocks. So hopefully this gave you guys a good introduction to Django as a CMS. You can put these blocks of text anywhere you want on any page. You just pick them out of your view, make a class for each page. It's a really good way to give users the ability to change stuff without letting them have the ability to destroy things. So thanks for watching. Check out the next video.